Back in March 2008, as part of the National Science and Engineering Week, Teachers TV, in collaboration with the British Association for the Advancement of Science, launched a nationwide study. Ready to Learn, the Experiment. Over 78,000 children between the ages of 5 and 16 and 682 schools took part. The children answered an online questionnaire reporting on how they'd travelled to school, what they had for breakfast and how much sleep they'd had. The findings from the study can be found at www.teachers.tv/experiment.
Well, I woke up, got ready, had some breakfast, some toast and some milk, left to school, which takes about half hour walking.
I went to bed at 7 o'clock and I had for my breakfast some fruit and some orange juice, but I walked to school.
The experiment was testing the hypothesis that sleep, exercise and diet had a direct impact on their readiness to learn.
Right, did you sleep well last night? I think the benefit of having all this scientific research is that it legitimises an awful lot of what we think we know.
Each child was presented with 3 online activities measuring short-term memory, problem solving and speed of response.
They really like the activities that were on the computers, the kind of bright colours and kind of putting things into place. They like kind of testing themselves in that way. And they're all kind of transfixed, on the screen for those 15 minutes while they were doing it.
The experiment was designed by clinical psychologists at the Tavistock Clinic, a centre of excellence in child psychology.
I think it is important for them to have sight of the findings and to think about, okay, what does science bring to their lives?
In this programme, we'll be looking at how Ready to Learn, the experiment, adds to the growing body of scientific research that examines the links between lifestyle and learning. We'll be looking at the key findings, as well as showing how a better understanding of brain function is helping teachers in the classroom.
I think the first thing to say about this study is to comment on the huge numbers of children taking part, which is over 70,000. I think as an incidental experiment, it shows you perhaps what no one had planned to show, which is the enthusiasm for teachers and schools and pupils for understanding more about the brain and for really maximising on educational opportunities. The advantage of having a large number is that you can reduce variation. So inevitably with self-reporting, there may be some kids who don't necessarily tell the truth as we know it. There might be some variation on what people think is the truth and how to express themselves. But a large sample size allows you to iron out some of these outliers so that you can actually perhaps see a trend that's significant in a way that you wouldn't with a smaller sample. But 70,000 odd is a very large number. Sadly, in labs, we would never get to those numbers in the kind of experiments we do. So I think the results should be taken seriously.
The experiment gave scientists the unique opportunity to get an insider's view of children's lifestyles, with the children themselves reporting on how they eat, exercise and sleep.
What was really surprising, over half of the secondary school children reported feeling tired when they woke up in the morning, and 40% of the primary school children and even more of the special school children reported feeling tired, not feeling refreshed when they got to school. And I think this, poses lots of questions that perhaps we hadn't thought of before.
The data recovered from the experiment correlates with other research in similar areas. Professor Gregory Storrs from the University of Oxford researches the impact of the lack of sleep on school children.
Well, there are all sorts of theories as to why we need sleep, none of them perfectly satisfactory, but from the practical point of view, what's clear that is if you don't sleep well, then you're affected quite badly, or can be, during the day. Basically, sleep has a restorative function. Without sleep, all sorts of things can go wrong. I mean, to an extreme in animal experiments, it's been demonstrated that if, say, rats are kept awake the whole time for a fortnight or so, well, they don't survive. Adolescence is a particularly troublesome time because there's a change in what's called the body clock. Young people of that age require more sleep than perhaps they're used to. So it's a particularly vulnerable time. So educators do need to have more emphasis placed on this topic in their basic training. They'll see the effects of poor sleep in the classroom for sure, because there's a very high proportion of young people who don't sleep well and therefore are affected in terms of their behaviour at school and their performance there. We've begun to talk to schools simply to provide a basic understanding, hopefully, of the importance of sleep, the ways in which poor sleep can be recognised, and give reassurance that help can be provided so that young people can feel much better during the day and perform better at school.
One of the most significant findings from the study Ready to Learn the experiment was that the intake of particular food types immediately prior to the start of a school day impacts upon children's cognitive functioning.
I think it was very interesting how many children don't have anything to eat before they come to school. And I think it was 8% of the secondary school pupils and 4% of the primary school children and 13% of children who are in special school don't have anything to eat before they come to school. And I think that's quite, well, we were surprised at those findings, particularly as schools sometimes run breakfast clubs and so on. So certainly the fact that having something to eat is important and having something healthy to eat does affect how you perform at school.
A number of food items were statistically significant. Cereal, milk and fruit juice were associated with better performance in the tasks, while sweets, crisps, tea, coffee and fizzy drinks were associated with a poorer performance in the test.
The results of this experiment that showed that nutrition, or good nutrition, has an impact on cognition, I think backs up previous research. I think we're really becoming aware of how important it is to get the right balance of minerals, vitamins and fatty acids for healthy neural function, so for the healthy function and communication of the nerves in the brain. And I think we're just starting to see the real significance of that, and I think this evidence adds to that body of evidence to show that just how important it is to get the right nutrition all the way through schooling.
Other scientific research is revealing the importance of nutrition and exercise on children's performance in school. Chinham Park Primary in Basingstoke has taken part in a pilot project called Food for the Brain. The 8-month scientific study involved changes in diet and exercise, as well as giving some of the children food supplements.
Steve, are you having tablets or not?
The children's behaviour and academic performance was monitored throughout.
1, 2, 3, back. Watch Georgia, everybody on this side. She's doing it well. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Good. What was exciting about the Food for the Brain project for me was it wasn't just about healthy eating and health and exercise. It was a whole package, a package that involved working with the children and their families. Now that also incorporated carrying out some initial tests to try and create a baseline for the children, looking at their personal happiness, looking at their behaviour, also making some measures of their learning, as we did as teachers, and then 6 months down the line, carrying out those tests again, and then finally at the end of the project, doing a final analysis of those results. And it was quite startling how many children had in fact made progress in a number of areas.
Parents and staff at Chinham have been working with nutritionist Kerry Torrens from the Food for the Brain project. Her aim is to promote awareness of the link between learning, behaviour and nutrition.
There is a significant link between nutrition and how we think, how we behave. For example, our brains are made up of 60% fat, and that's not just any old fat, it's not saturated fat, it's essential fat. And those fats can only be achieved by eating them in the diet. So oily fish, nuts and seeds are absolutely essential for the composition of our brain. And then the brain also uses energy, and it uses 30% of our total energy consumption. So it's really important that we provide sustained energy.
Scientific research into the effects of diet on the brain is also taking place in a number of schools in Swansea. A team from the University of Swansea Psychology Department have been carrying out tests on children's performance and seeing what the relationship is to their diet.
I mean, there's enormous interest in giving the optimal conditions for a child's learning experience. The child's brain is, relative to the rest of the body, is larger than in the adult. It's about 10% of body weight in the child, it's about 2% in the adult. In addition, the brain is more active in the child per amount of tissue. So if you take 10 grams of tissue in the child, it'll use twice as much glucose as 10 grams of tissue if it had come from the adult. So, you know, it is a very hungry organ.
Professor Benton's research involved assessing the children's performance in relation to 3 different types of breakfast.
What we did was to design 3 meals that varied in the rate at which it would release energy. They all had the same energy levels. The calories were the kilojoules were the same, but in some they would be released more slowly. And the hypothesis was that the more slowly released energy would have beneficial effects late in the morning.
The children were each given a series of tests after they had been given 3 very different types of breakfasts, varying in range from fast, medium, and slow glucose release foods.
Late in the morning, we gave them a series of tests. A test of memory, the ability to sustain attention, and whether they reacted in a frustrated way when facing a difficult task. We studied the children for a month, and each day they had one of the 3 breakfasts. So, in fact, the information we report comes from children who have had each of the breakfasts at least 3 occasions.
Interestingly, the continental breakfast of ham and cheese and multigrain bread, which is a slow release of glucose, came out on top.
If you have a meal that released the energies slowly, that you had better memory, your increased ability to sustain attention, and you're less likely to become frustrated when faced with a difficult situation. Of course, behaviour in school, as elsewhere, depends on a very wide range of different factors, of which diet is one. So I'd like to see it added to the list.
Back at Chinham, the Food for the Brain study also looked at the effects of food supplements on children's behaviour and academic progress.
Part of the Food for the Brain project also incorporated giving children additional vitamin and fish oil supplements. Now, as you know, these are very expensive items to buy off the shelf, and part of the Food for the Brain project was that this was all provided for free for the children.